Hi, I'm Tim, and welcome to WatchYouWant.com. Thanks for logging on. Today, we're looking at a true rarity, or should I say, a truly rare homage. This is the Roger Dubuis Hommage 43 from the Hommage collection, first debuted in 1996. This series represents Roger Dubuis' fusion of the traditional elements of Geneva watchmaking as experienced by the man himself during his education, as well as the latter-day styling traits and bold proportions that the Roger Dubuis brand has brought to the table as an innovator and a pioneer in the independent horology movement. Now, Roger Dubuis got his start as a watchmaker, naturally, as a complication specialist and a hired gun of sorts. After a better part of a decade and a half working as a complication specialist, complication designer, and restoration expert with Patek Philippe, he started exploring the notion of building his own watches, and along with business partner Carlos Diaz, by the mid-1990s, he was ready to put his foot into the water, so to speak. Now, back then, it was not cool or accepted for watchmakers to break off and go free agent and start their own firms. A few had begun to test the waters as under-the-table designers for larger established names, the likes of Christophe Claret and F. P. Journe, were in the game at that point, but Roger Dubuis was doing something different, something that really only Frank Mueller and Daniel Roth had done up to that point, which was put his name on an all-new independent brand watch. And unlike those other two, Dubuis immediately went straight for the top, hallmark of Geneva. And when I say this watch is rare, I'm not just talking about its status as one of only 28 of these HO43 Hommage Rose Gold limited editions manufactured. That's a rarity. But like all Roger Dubuis watches, this is a Geneva hallmark signed watch finished to the standards set out in the statutes of the city and canton of Geneva. Since 1886, this has been the most exacting standard of watchmaking finish in the world that endures to this day, and this watch has met that August standard. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. Every year, Switzerland produces something like 30 million watches. They're actually a little bit past that mark at this point. Of those, fewer than 25,000 will receive the hallmark of Geneva, the stamp that can only be accorded to the top movements finished and cased up in the canton or city of Geneva. You're talking substantially less than 1%. You're talking about 1% of 1%. So this is an exceptional rarity. Not only will you never see one of these other 28 watches, in most offices across America, even at some pretty elite firms, you're never going to see a Geneva seal signed movement. And that's a real shame, because this Roger Dubuis RD57 Geneva seal movement is an absolute beauty. The iPhone betrays me, I'm sorry, but this movement holds up not just under our SLR lenses in our photo studio, it holds up under a microscope. Geneva seal is more than just polish, it's more than just graining, it's more than just Côte de Genève. Geneva seal means that when you pull a screw out of one of its sockets, you look underneath the threading of the pilot, underneath, that's right, invisible parts of the screw in the movement. You look at it under a microscope, you will see your reflection. That's right, mirror finish on parts you cannot see. And the same goes for the beveling on all bridges and plates and all levers. The wheels are straight, radially grained, circular graining. Everything is finished. There's no raw bird edge inside this watch. Everything is polished. Everything is textured. Everything is improved by hand to remove all of the birth scars to a standard that other watchmakers can only dream of achieving. And that's what sets Roger Dubuis apart, because they combine a style that's big and bold and contemporary with that heritage dating back to 1886 of the Geneva seal. Let me just show you how big this watch is, because this is no delicate daisy. This is a modern reference on my 6 1/3 inch wrist. You could see its tightly held lugs actually do allow it to sit decently, but this is the answer to the question asked by those with big wrists. How do I find a formal watch that's equal to my wrist? Now, at 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters for our metric friends, this is a little bit bigger than a dress reference that I would wear personally. It will fit a smaller wrist, so it's a matter of taste. But this might be the only answer to those who want a Geneva seal formal watch, but just can't get their minds around a 40, 39, 38, 37 millimeter Patek or Vacheron. It's a great answer to that question, and it's a great looking watch because it also combines all of the homage elements that Roger Dubuis envisioned when he first coined the term homage and launched the series only 1 year into his manufacture in 1996. The idea being that since he was classically trained in Geneva, he wanted to pay deference and respect to those who had brought him up through the system. He wanted to make reference not just to the Geneva seal hallmark standards on the movement, but case design, lug design, and dial design of the Geneva school of watchmaking, so to speak. And to that end, he has a large lacquered dial with individually painted watchmaker's Roman numerals. You can see that classic watchmaker's 4 right there. It's a little bit of a trick of the eye designed to improve the symmetry and aesthetics of the watch dial itself. The little sector or railroad minute track on the inner dial right around the Roger Dubuis and Horlogère Genevoise signage right there. The watch features a gorgeous contrast between the black and the white of the dial, and as you move out, there's articulation to add some definition and visual interest to that massive case. You can see that the bezel has a nice separation from the case itself and contrasting finish. Brushed, more or less a vertical brush, a tight vertical brush on the side to give a satined look, contrasts with the high polish of the lugs and the bezel itself. So you've got a great deal of contrast and play of light, but at the same time you have variety, diversity to break up the size of this rose gold case. At 43 millimeters, it's not small, but it never becomes monolithic or blocky because of the way the lines, the breaks, and the finishes are varied by the Roger Dubuis design team. And let's talk about those lugs a little bit. They are straight and they are curved. They have a little bit of a knurl to them as they move down towards the strap. That allows it to sit very flat against the wrist, and you can see the case back is flat as a pancake, so it wears very comfortable in spite of its size. The watch is an exquisite piece of craftsmanship, but also a daring piece of design. Now, it's easy to get into the pattern of just launching conservative dress watches. When you come out of the Geneva tradition, it's what you've seen your whole life, it's what everyone else is doing, and it's easy to be a Me Too manufacturer in an industry that's often hidebound by tradition. Roger Dubuis never been that way. Between the exclusivity of the Geneva hallmark, the standards of finishing of a movement that holds up under a microscope, everything from beveled bridges to polished screw and jewel countersinks to a gorgeous, traditional black polished swan's neck regulator, you've got all that Geneva seal hallmark quality, but you've also got a modern image, a watch that wears well alongside contemporary dress references and doesn't shrink into the vintage scene and try to hide in tradition. There's something to be said for a small watch on a small wrist. But if you have a big wrist and you want to dress style and you don't want to dress down to the vintage proportions or play it awkward with a small watch on a big expansive skin, this Roger Dubuis Hommage 43 with Geneva seal movement might be the perfect watch for you. In fact, I would say that even if you don't have a small wrist, if you want something with the highest standards of finish and watchmaking, but a modern, aggressive, daring style, this Roger Dubuis Hommage 43mm just might be the watch you want.